Surprise, daughter, you're not coming. That's what my father said at the airport. My boarding pass had been canceled. My suitcase, my dreams, left useless on the floor. And my family? They were laughing, recording me like a clown. My name is Amy Carter. I'm 34 years old. I work as a senior software engineer in Seattle. For years, I paid their bills. Their golf, their salon, my brother's tuition. $7,000 a month, gone from my account every month. I thought it was love. I thought it was family. Turns out I was just their ATM with legs. They thought I'd sulk at home, too embarrassed to fight back. They didn't know I was about to rewrite the rules. If you've ever been betrayed by family, this story is for you. Growing up, my family didn't celebrate milestones. They mocked them. On my 16th birthday, I thought I was finally getting a car. Dad blindfolded me, led me outside, the whole family cheering. When the cloth came off, there it was, a toy car. They laughed for weeks while I scrubbed tables to save for wheels. College wasn't different. They threw a party, promising the whole family they'd cover tuition. 2 weeks later, they called it a joke and handed me loan forms. I signed anyway. I'm still paying $42,000 in debt. That prank never left me. Neither did the bitterness. As I got older, the jokes stopped being harmless. They became habits, excuses, demands, masked as family love. My father quit working years ago, yet kept his golf club. $800 a month, for a man who never earned it again. My mother worked part-time, but her nails and hair were constant expenses. $600 to $900 every month from my account. And Alex, my brother, eternal student. 4 majors, 0 graduation. But his tuition? $9,000 each term, straight from my paycheck. They ate out, traveled, bought gadgets, lived like royalty. While I sat in a 1-bedroom apartment, driving a 10-year-old car. Nights were worse. Head pounding, blood pressure climbing, doctor warning me to slow down. I smiled in his office, but inside I wanted to scream. I was exhausted, yet I kept giving. Sometimes I'd come home, stare at the empty walls, eat dinner alone at a folding table. The silence suffocating. They lived loud, glittering lives, while mine shrank smaller every year. Kevin, my ex, once overheard them laughing behind my back. "She's such a sucker," they said, clinking glasses. I didn't believe him then. I defended them. Now I know he was right. I wasn't their daughter. I was the punchline that paid the bills. My life became a cycle of work, payments, and silence. 60-hour weeks blurred together. My apartment nothing more than a recharge station. I woke, coded, paid bills, collapsed into bed, then did it again. Every notification on my phone carried a price tag attached. Dad demanding his golf dues. Mom asking for her salon money. Alex pretending tuition emergencies were beyond his control. I told myself it was family. That someday they'd appreciate me. But deep down, the emptiness grew louder. The doctor called it stress. I called it love. Both were killing me. My body began to rebel. Headaches hammered behind my eyes. Blood pressure climbing too high. I lay awake at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling fan, wondering if all this sacrifice would ever mean something real. Meanwhile, Dad swung his golf clubs, Mom flaunted manicures, Alex partied. They lived in color while I withered in grayscale. I started dreaming of escape. Not forever, just 1 week of breathing. Hawaii became my obsession. Ocean waves instead of server alarms. Sunrise instead of Slack messages. For once, I wanted laughter without a bill attached. So I worked harder. Overtime, side projects, skipped lunches, caffeine replacing sleep. Every dollar went toward that trip. I spent $8,500 of my own savings for upgrades and extras. Premium flights, an oceanfront suite, even a surprise helicopter tour. I pictured us smiling together. Finally a family, not a transaction. Maybe this vacation could fix what years of jokes had broken. Maybe I'd stop feeling like an outsider in my own bloodline. The night before we left, I stood in my tiny kitchen. Suitcase packed, boarding pass printed, alarm set for dawn. For the first time in years, I felt excited. I even whispered to myself, this could change everything. Maurice, my goldfish, floated lazily in his bowl. He was my only witness, my only constant companion. I promised him I'd bring back sunshine. That morning, we loaded into my dad's SUV, leased under my name. They joked about beaches. Alex glued to his phone as always. I stared out the window, imagining sand under my feet. For once, I believed I belonged. But as we reached the airport, unease crept into my chest. Dad and Alex exchanged strange looks, whispers I couldn't catch. Still, I pushed it aside, clinging to hope like a lifeline. Because what else did I have, if not hope? I had no idea the dream I built was already ashes. The check-in agent hesitated, tapping the keyboard again and again. Finally, she looked up with that careful, pitying expression. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Your reservation was canceled 2 days ago." Her words sliced through me. My pulse pounded in my ears, heat rising in my chest. I turned to my family, desperate for clarity. But what I saw gutted me. They were laughing. My father doubled over, clutching his side. My brother Alex grinned, phone pointed directly at my face. And my mother? She waved dismissively, eyes sparkling with cruelty. "Relax," she said, rolling her eyes. "It's just a joke. Don't be so dramatic." A joke. That's what they called this public humiliation. Strangers behind me shifted uncomfortably, watching my world unravel. I whispered, "I paid for the hotel, for the car, for everything." Dad clapped my shoulder like a buddy at a bar. "You work too much anyway. Thought you'd enjoy a little staycation." Alex laughed harder, muttering, "Loser," under his breath. He kept filming, making sure my humiliation lived forever on his feed. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Dad lit up. "The plane's not for you. Go on a train, loser." My chest burned. I wanted to scream, cry, beg them to stop. But all I could do was stand there, rooted to the spot. The agent cleared her throat. "Ma'am, I need to help the next customer. If you want to buy another ticket, customer service is over there." They didn't even look back. Their laughter trailed as they disappeared into security. My suitcase suddenly weighed 1,000 pounds. Every glance from the line behind me pierced deeper. I forced my legs to move, dragging myself away from the counter. The drive home was a blur, knuckles white against the steering wheel, tears threatening every blink, not just from the prank, but from the years leading to it. Years of being their wallet, their safety net, their fool. Back in my apartment, the silence felt crueler than ever. I dropped my bag and went straight to my computer. Banking app open. Transactions lined up like chains. Monthly transfer to my parents, $3,400. Alex's tuition, due next week, $9,000. Dad's golf membership, $800. Mom's salon fund, $750. On and on. Thousands bleeding out of me every month. I stared at the numbers until my vision blurred. Then for the first time I saw them clearly. Not as family support. Not as love. As exploitation. As chains. My hand didn't shake when I hit cancel. Alex's tuition, gone. Dad's golf, over. Mom's salon, finished. Emergency fund, password changed. Locked tight. Credit cards, their names erased. 15 minutes, that's all it took. 15 minutes to undo years of enabling. I leaned back, exhaling like I'd shed a mountain from my chest. For the first time in years, I felt something close to free. They canceled my flight as a prank. I canceled their lifeline for good. They came back early. I knew the moment my phone buzzed non-stop. Texts, missed calls, voicemails stacked like storm clouds. Then a knock rattled my apartment door. I opened it to 3 furious faces. My father stormed in first, slamming his carry-on on the floor. "You canceled everything," he shouted, voice shaking with rage. "My golf club emailed me. Do you know how humiliating that is?" Behind him, my mother followed, sunglasses perched like armor. Her voice trembled, but not from guilt. "You stopped the salon payments, Amy. How could you do that to me?" And Alex, my brother, eyes wide with panic. "My tuition's due. I'll get kicked out. You can't just cut me off." I leaned against the table, arms folded. Their words bounced off me like cheap bullets. "You left me stranded at the airport. You laughed in my face." My father's jaw tightened. "Don't exaggerate. It was a prank. You owe us. We raised you." Something in me cracked, then hardened. "No," I said steady. "I don't owe you anything anymore." My mother gasped, crocodile tears spilling instantly. "It was just a joke, sweetheart. We didn't mean it that way." Then came the guilt trip I'd heard my whole life. "After everything we've done for you," Dad growled. "You'd really abandon your family over one little prank?" Mom added softly. "We sacrificed for you. Don't throw us away now." Her voice was sugar, but the blade beneath was sharp. I remembered therapy with Dr. K. Her voice echoed, "Say no without apology, no without explanation." So I did. "No, Mom, no more." Alex stepped closer, desperation replacing arrogance. "Come on, Amy, don't do this, please, I need this degree." I laughed, but it wasn't warm. "Maybe you should earn it for once. Like the rest of us." My father slammed his palm on my coffee table. The sound jolted through the room, rattling my PlayStation controller. "We are your family. You're supposed to help. That's what family does." I stood tall, meeting his glare head-on. Family doesn't humiliate each other. Family doesn't use each other. You've mistaken me for an ATM, that ends now. For the first time, they went silent. The weight of my words hung between us like heavy smoke. My mother sobbed. My brother's shoulders slumped. My father looked away. I grabbed my keys, walked to the door, heart hammering but steady. "Lock up when you leave," I said flatly. Then I looked back once, just once. "Good luck out there. You'll need it." In that silence, for the first time, I felt untouchable. The days after felt strange. My phone lit up with calls, texts, endless messages. Anger, guilt trips, begging, even threats to shame me publicly. I ignored them all. Weeks passed, and reality finally hit them. Without my money, their world shrank overnight. Dad sold his golf clubs and took a retail job. Mom traded luxury salons for discount chains, working longer boutique shifts. Alex left his private university, enrolling in community college instead. They hated every adjustment, but they survived. Turns out, they could stand on their own, once forced to. As for me, I started living for myself again. Headaches faded. My blood pressure dropped. I slept through the night without fear of another Venmo request. At work, my focus sharpened. My performance finally noticed. I earned a promotion, one I'd almost given up on. I joined a hiking group, met friends who knew nothing of my past. I started cooking again, filling my apartment with smells of real meals. Even Maurice the goldfish got company. A second bowl, a new friend. And yes, I began dating someone new. He doesn't see me as a wallet, but as a woman. The first time he insisted on splitting the check, I nearly cried. It felt revolutionary, after years of one-way giving. I even booked Hawaii again, this time alone. Watching the sunset over the ocean, I felt something new. Not sadness, not loss, peace. The helicopter tour I'd once bought for them became mine alone. The pilot asked if I was lonely, seeing paradise without family. I smiled, the answer rising effortlessly. Not at all. For the first time, I'm exactly where I belong. Dr. K calls it boundaries. I call it freedom. Because forgiveness doesn't mean surrender. Family without respect isn't family at all. Have you ever faced something like this? Tell me in the comments. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is simply say no before saying goodbye. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like. And share it with someone who needs to hear this today. Don't forget to subscribe for more true family betrayal stories. That reminds us we are stronger than we think.
I didn't tell anyone I was coming. Not because I wanted to surprise them, but because I was tired of being the only one who kept showing up. The plane touched down just after dawn. Sacramento looked exactly the way I left it 7 years ago, flat-wide skied and already too bright. I had only one bag small enough to keep under the seat. On my lap sat a little brown box tied with string corners dented from the overhead bin. Inside was Grandpa Frank's old transistor radio, the one he used to keep on the porch in the summers. I'd repaired it myself. New knob, fresh batteries cleaned out the dust behind the dial. I imagined him holding it, pretending not to smile. The cab turned onto our street, maple-lined and quiet like always. Number 2417 still had the chipped mailbox, the one I painted with him when I was 11, but the porch light was off. No newspaper. No signs of life. I paid the driver and stepped out. The lawn was overgrown. The air smelled faintly of dry leaves and something else, something like a house no one had breathed in for days. I knocked once, then again. No answer. The curtains were drawn. The wreath Mom used to hang after Thanksgiving wasn't on the door. I stood there longer than I meant to the gift box still in my hands. I checked my phone. No messages. Just an old reminder to refill Grandpa's blood pressure meds. The front steps creaked beneath me when I finally sat down. I didn't know yet that I had arrived in the right place at the wrong time, or maybe the only time left. I was still sitting on the front steps when I heard the squeak of a garden hose being dragged across concrete. Across the street, a woman in a fleece robe and slippers was watering a small patch of yellowing grass. She waved, then squinted. "Lily," she called. "Is that you?" It took me a second. "Mrs. Garcia?" I said, standing. Her face was fuller than I remembered, but the warmth in her voice hadn't changed. "Well, I'll be." She smiled, crossing the street with a slow, careful pace. "I thought you were in Seattle, right?" I nodded. "I am. Just got in." She looked past me at the dark windows. "They're not home, Han," I figured. I tried to keep my tone light. You wouldn't happen to know where they went. Mrs. Garcia hesitated, tugging at the end of her sleeve. Margaret said something about Hawaii. Big family trip. Left just after Christmas. Hawaii, I repeated. She nodded. Maui, I think. Told me Franklin didn't want to go. Too old for long flights, she said. Her eyes flicked back to the house. Figured you were with them. I wasn't, I said. The wind picked up, catching the hem of my coat. Mrs. Garcia seemed to notice the shift in my voice. You didn't know I shook my head. No one told me. Oh. She glanced down, then said gently, Listen, I don't mean to worry you, but the ambulance came maybe 10 days ago. I saw them load Franklin in. Looked bad. Thought someone would have told you. Her voice softened. He collapsed out front near the mailbox. Paramedics looked serious. My fingers went cold. Which hospital? County General, I think? Thank you. I swallowed, trying to keep my voice steady. She gave a small, worried nod and crossed back over garden hose still trailing behind her. I stood there, phone in my hand, but I didn't call anyone. I already knew who wasn't going to answer. The woman at the reception desk wore glasses too big for her face and a lanyard that said Mona. When I gave her his name, she blinked, typed, then looked up slowly. Franklin Adams, ICU. 6th floor. She hesitated. Are you family? I'm his granddaughter, I said. No one's been by, she murmured almost to herself. Not even once. She handed me a visitor badge and buzzed me through. The elevator smelled like lemon cleaner and something underneath it, metal or memory. I watched the numbers light up one by one. When the doors opened, the hallway felt colder than the lobby, the kind of cold that sinks through fabric and into skin. Room 623. I walked slower than I meant to. His room was at the far end. A curtain was drawn halfway. A monitor beeped rhythmically from inside, steady and unbothered. When I stepped in, I didn't recognize him at first. He looked smaller. His face was sunken, the skin around his eyes hollow and yellowed. Tubes snaked into his nose and mouth into his arms. A machine by the bed hissed gently, forcing air in and out of his chest with mechanical precision. His hands rested palm-up fingers curled slightly, as if waiting for something he'd long stopped reaching for. I stood there for a while, the door half open behind me. I didn't cry. Not then. I just listened to the machine breathe for him. Eventually, I stepped forward, pulled the chair close. My knees bent slowly, like my body knew something my brain hadn't caught up to yet. I rested my hand on his. It was dry, cool, familiar. Hi, Grandpa, I whispered. It's me. No response, no flutter of an eyelid, no twitch. Just the quiet churn of the ventilator and the occasional blip from the monitors. I reached into my bag and took out the little brown box. Set it gently on the table near the window. His old radio now fixed useless. He wasn't there to hear it, but I needed him to know I brought it anyway. I waited until I was out of the ICU wing, past the hand sanitizer stations and the too bright hallway. I found a quiet bench near the elevators and opened my phone. I didn't expect her to pick up, but she did on the second ring. The screen flickered, then settled. Blue sky, palm trees, a shimmering pool behind her shoulder. Then her face. My mother, Margaret Adams in full color. Sunglasses perched on her head, drink in hand, sun-kissed and smiling like it was just another Tuesday. Oh, Lily, she said, brushing hair from her forehead. Everything okay? I couldn't speak right away. Did you know, I asked, barely above a whisper. Her brow furrowed. Know what that grandpa's in the hospital? That he's on life support. She blinked, sighed. He didn't want to come with us. You know how he is. Always making things more dramatic than they are. He collapsed outside. Alone, I said. A neighbor had to call 911. Margaret shifted in her seat. We all needed a break, Lily. The stress. You have no idea. Keeping the house, your brother, the bills. I've been the one paying the bills, I said, voice cracking. For the first time, she paused. He could die, I said. And you're by a pool. She looked away, then back. I didn't think it was that serious. Her voice was flat, measured, like she was reading from a script that used to work on me. I need to go, I said. Lily, she started. I ended the call before I heard the rest. She hadn't asked if I was okay. She hadn't asked about him. Just silence now, thick as water, ringing in my ears. I sat at the far end of the hospital cafe, back to the wall, a cup of lukewarm coffee untouched in front of me. My phone lay on the table like a question I hadn't answered yet. I opened the banking app, the joint family account created back in 2008 when Dad lost his job and I offered to help still had my name on it. I never removed it, never thought I'd need to. I scrolled, one charge after another. First-class airfare to Maui, resort fees, a spa package at the Four Seasons, a dinner for 6 at a place I couldn't pronounce, a new necklace from a boutique in San Francisco. Then Chloe's name twice, some kind of online influencer service, brand visibility package it said, no sign of Grandpa's prescriptions, no co-pays, no home care services, just pleasure neatly itemized. I blinked at the numbers, added them in my head. Tens of thousands gone. My thumb hovered over the settings icon. I tapped. A message popped up: freeze all debit activity for this account. Yes, no. I stared at it. My heart was beating loud in my chest. Not fast, just hard. Like it wanted me to hear something. Yes. Then another message. This action will suspend all connected cards. Are you sure? Yes, the app spun once, then again. Success. Freeze initiated. Allow up to 30 minutes for full processing. I locked the screen. My reflection stared back at me in the black glass. I looked tired, not angry, not righteous, just someone who had finally stopped pretending not to see. They'd left him with nothing, so now I left them with the same. And I did it quietly. It took 47 minutes. That's how long after the freeze before the phone started buzzing. First came a call from Kyle. I didn't pick up. Then Chloe, then Mom, then Kyle again, then a number I didn't recognize, Hawaii area code. I let them all go to voicemail. The screen lit up like a slot machine gone rogue. Texts poured in. Kyle. What the hell, Lily? None of the cards are working. Are you serious right now, Chloe? I'm literally stranded. I have a collaboration scheduled. You ruined everything. Mom, no text. Just a voicemail. I played it. Lily. Lily, what are you doing? You ungrateful little brat. After everything we've done for you, you want to humiliate us? Your grandfather would be ashamed. You don't get to make these decisions. Fix it. Now. I replayed it once. Not for the words, they were exactly what I expected, but for the tone. It wasn't grief. It wasn't worry. It was fury. The kind that comes from losing control, not from losing someone. I scrolled back through the texts. Kyle was now demanding bank details. Chloe had sent a crying selfie with the caption, "Do you even care what you've done to me?" I didn't answer. I watched the notifications roll in, each one louder in silence than the last. Then I turned the phone face down, leaned back in the stiff cafe chair, and stared out the window at nothing in particular. There was no satisfaction, no rush of justice, just a hollow space where guilt used to live. And in its place, something quieter. Certainty. When I returned to the ICU, the machines were still ticking in rhythm, oblivious to everything that had happened while I was gone. Grandpa hadn't moved. His chest rose and fell under the ventilator, as steady and fragile as before. I sat down, same chair, same angle, same silence. And that's when I noticed it, a corner of yellowing paper barely visible beneath the tray table, pushed to the side, tucked under with care, not by accident. I reached for it, fingers brushing metal, and pulled. A manila envelope, creased at the edges. My name written in his handwriting, clean block letters, all caps. Inside, a printed document signed and notarized. Durable power of attorney, healthcare and financial. It named me. Not Margaret, not Kyle, not Chloe, just me. There was a copy of a handwritten will updated 8 weeks ago, and one small note written on a torn receipt, "Kiddo, don't let them rewrite this story." Grandpa. My throat closed. He knew. Somehow he knew. He hadn't called me, hadn't warned me. Maybe because he couldn't. Maybe because he believed I'd come anyway. Or maybe this was the warning, left exactly where I'd find it. I folded the papers back, placed them gently in the envelope, and tucked it into my coat. Then I sat beside him again. This time, not just as a visitor, but as the only person he trusted to finish what he couldn't. Edwin Reese still used a flip phone. I found that out when he returned my call from a number I didn't recognize and asked to meet at the same diner Grandpa used to take me to after Sunday service. He was already there when I arrived. Window seat, black coffee, no cream, no sugar. "Lily," he said, standing. His suit was older than I was, but pressed. I hoped we'd never have to meet like this. I slid into the booth and placed the envelope on the table. He opened it without a word, read through the documents slowly. No dramatics, just the steady focus of someone who's seen too many families come apart behind closed doors. When he reached the handwritten note, his expression shifted, not surprise, just recognition. "He gave this to you directly?" he asked. "No, I found it. In his hospital room, hidden under the tray." Reese nodded. "He stopped by my office 8 weeks ago. Told me he had a feeling. Said he didn't want to burden you unless he had to. That's why he didn't call." I murmured. He was proud, Reese said. But not foolish. He knew how things were leaning. We went through the next steps. First, petition for temporary conservatorship, both medical and financial. Second, notification of the court and hospital administration. Third, account audit to track misappropriated funds from the shared account. "Do I have to appear in court?" I asked. "You can do it virtually," he said. "But I wouldn't recommend it." "Why not?" "Because they'll show up in person," he said, folding the envelope closed. "And if you're not there, they'll fill the room with their version of the story." I nodded slowly. "I'll be there," I said. Reese leaned back. "Good, then we'll make this official by morning." We parted outside. The air had turned sharp, the kind that makes your breath show. He offered a handshake. His palm was dry and firm. Back in the car, I sat still for a long time, fingers on the steering wheel, eyes on nothing. Grandpa had planned for this, and now I had to finish it. The courthouse was quiet in that particular way buildings get when the stakes are private, but the outcome is public. I sat on the left side of the room, hands folded in my lap papers in a manila folder beside me. Across the aisle, Margaret wore a beige blazer too thin for the weather. Kyle sat stiff beside her, chewing the inside of his cheek, same as he did during high school finals. Their lawyer looked polished. He gave me one quick glance, then turned his attention to the judge. Her name was Eleanor Clean, mid-60s, no nonsense in posture or tone. She called the session to order. My attorney, Mr. Reese, began by outlining the facts: my grandfather's condition, duration of hospitalization, lack of visitation. Then came the documents, the durable power of attorney, the updated will, the evidence I'd found beneath the hospital tray. Then came the finances. He read off the transaction history like an obituary for trust. Tens of thousands drained from the shared account, none of it used for medical care. When it was Kyle's turn, he stood buttoned his jacket like he was preparing for a TED Talk. "Your Honor," he said smoothly, "my sister has always been emotionally intense. She's had struggles in the past. We've supported her when she lashed out." "Objection," Reese said sharply. "Irrelevant. Inflammatory." Judge Clean raised a hand. "Mr. Adams," she said to Kyle, "stick to facts. No character assessments unless asked." Kyle sat down without another word. Then Margaret stood. "I raised that girl," she began. 9 months carrying her ballet lessons braces. Mrs. Adams, the judge, interrupted. "We're not here to discuss orthodontics. We are here to review medical authority and financial misappropriation." A silence fell over the room. Reese slid a copy of a recent email across the table, one Kyle had sent to extended family, accusing me of manipulating Grandpa's condition for control. Judge Clean read it slowly, face unreadable. Then she spoke. "Ms. Adams," she said, turning to me, "based on the evidence provided and in the absence of legal or medical opposition, I'm granting you full conservatorship over your grandfather's medical and financial affairs." She turned to Margaret and Kyle. "You are hereby barred from access to any accounts or decisions related to Mr. Franklin Adams pending further court review." Kyle looked at the floor. Margaret's lips tightened, but she said nothing. I didn't gloat. I didn't even breathe deep. I just nodded. The hospital was quieter that night, or maybe I was just listening differently. I walked the hallway to room 623 without thinking each step more familiar than the last. The light above his bed was dimmed, casting a soft glow on the edges of the machine and the silver in his hair. I took the same chair, pulled it close. The room smelled the same plastic alcohol swabs, the faint echo of something sterile and slowly fading. I sat in silence, not expecting anything. Then his hand moved. Just barely, the fingers twitching like they'd forgotten how to grip. I leaned forward, heart pounding in my ears. His eyes fluttered, not wide open, just enough to find something. Or someone. "Grandpa," I said, barely breathing. His gaze wandered for a second, then settled. His lips parted dry and pale. The machine kept breathing for him, but his voice somehow slipped between the pulses of air. "I knew." He rasped, barely louder than the hum around us. "Knew you'd come." That was all. Not a plea. Not a farewell. Just a truth he'd kept safe until I arrived. I didn't cry. I only pressed my forehead gently to his hand, still warm this time. Held it like I was afraid it would float away. And in that moment, I stopped waiting for someone else to do what needed doing. He had waited long enough. Grandpa passed 3 days later. Peacefully, they said. The machines stopped before sunrise. I was there. Not holding his hand, he didn't need that. I just sat close enough that he wasn't alone. The funeral was small, quiet, just how he would have wanted it. No slideshow, no flowers flown in. Just the minister from his church, a wooden urn, and the folding chair he used to sit on every afternoon with a glass of iced tea. I didn't tell Kyle or Margaret the date. Chloe found out anyway, tried to show up. Security stopped her at the gate. She shouted something about forgiveness and how dare you, but I never turned around. The service had already started. Afterward, I sat in his old chair on the porch. The radio I'd fixed sat next to me. I turned it on. Static. Then a song low and warbled something from the 50s he used to hum while painting the fence. That night, I filed the paperwork to start a foundation in his name, the Porchlight Fund, a small nonprofit built from what remained of the estate dedicated to elder care patients without family. No big ambitions, just enough to pay for someone to sit beside them, make sure their meds were filled, that they were seen. I kept the name simple because he was. Weeks later, a letter came from the county. Margaret and Kyle were filing for review, contesting the will, claiming undue influence. I mailed back copies of the hospital records, the signed documents, and a copy of the voicemail. Margaret left me the one where she called me ungrateful. I never heard back. Some stories don't need repeating. Some families don't need reunion. The text came on a Sunday morning. "Kyle, you happy now?" We lost everything. He was our grandfather too. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I knew exactly what I wouldn't. No argument, no defense, no apology. I opened the message field, typed one line, and hit send. Me, you were never mine to lose. That was it. No more calls, no more shouting through lawyers, no more staged sorrow or broken inheritance. Just a silence I could live with. And somewhere I believed he would have understood. They say you remember the way people make you feel more than what they said. But I remember exactly what she said that day. We were at the lake house in Vermont. It was July. Not too hot, just enough breeze off the water to keep the tablecloths from sticking to the wood. The kind of summer weather that tricks you into thinking everything's fine. My mother, Joanne Jordan, had just refilled her wine glass. She was wearing her favorite lake earrings, turquoise drops shaped like tiny leaves. When she stood and tapped the side of her glass, I thought she was going to say something about Dad. It would have been 10 years next week. Or maybe she'd say something about family, togetherness, the usual. But no. She looked at my sister Emily and said, "To the only child who stayed loyal." There was a pause, like the room hadn't caught up yet. Then came the laughter, nervous at first, then full. My cousins clapped. Uncle Dennis let out a whistle. Emily smiled the way she always did when things went her way, small, like she didn't want to gloat, but she did. I didn't say anything. I just stood there behind the grill tongs in one hand, napkin in the other. I wasn't in a single photo that day. Not from what I could see. When Aunt June asked if I could take one of her and the girls, she handed me the phone without a second glance. No one noticed when I slipped inside. Back in the hallway, I opened my laptop, slid the file into the presentation queue behind the family slideshow Emily had prepared. No one knew I'd added my own version. No one asked. When I walked back out, my mother caught my eye across the table. She smiled like everything was fine. I smiled back. "You'll remember this day," I said quietly. "Just not how you think." 10 minutes later, I played the video. 20 minutes after that, no one at the table could look each other in the eye. "My name is Claire Jordan. I'm 38. I used to teach 8th grade English in Connecticut. These days, I work freelance editing manuscripts, writing small things for small places. It doesn't sound like much, but I've built something that's mine, quietly and without permission. I'm the older one. Emily is 3 years younger. When we were kids, people used to say we balanced each other out. I was the steady one, books, quiet rooms, early bedtimes. Emily was all movement. Barefoot in the yard, singing at the top of her lungs, bleeding from knees, she didn't bother to patch. Mom Joanne used to laugh when Emily interrupted dinner to show off a play she'd written in the garage. She clapped the loudest. I remember that. I remember watching her face. When I brought home straight A's, she'd nod. "I never had to worry about you," she'd say. And then she'd turn to Emily, who'd failed her math test, and hug her so tightly, like failing was somehow braver than passing. I used to think that was love. That what we needed most determined how much we were given. I didn't need much, so I didn't get much. It made sense back then. But the older I got, the more that kind of love felt like an agreement I hadn't signed. Dad Mark Jordan was the quiet one. A machinist who built boats in his free time, he never raised his voice in that house. He wasn't affectionate in the way people write poems about, but he showed up. Every school concert, every late-night ride to pick me up from rehearsal. He once told me in the garage one winter that he liked the way I watched people. "You see what's missing, Claire?" he said. "That's a gift. Just don't let it turn into a burden." He passed away 10 years ago. A quiet heart attack in the driveway while loading groceries. After that, the house got quieter in some ways, louder in others, and the space between me and my mother that had always been there suddenly felt permanent. After Dad died, things shifted fast. Emily moved back home within 3 months. She said she needed to be close. She brought a new boyfriend with her, then another, then none at all. She was 28 and still searching, Mom said. Still soft, still healing. I lived 2 states over in a small town outside Worcester. I called. I sent flowers that first Christmas, drove down for Easter brunch and found out they'd already eaten. Mom waved it off. "I thought you weren't coming. You never confirmed things." That wasn't true, but I let it pass. You learn after a while which arguments are just delays dressed as conversations. A year later, Emily's marriage fell apart. I don't know the details. One day, there were photos of the wedding on the fridge, and the next, a cardboard box of her things by the door. She didn't cry much, just moved back into her old room and called it a reset. Joanne let her, said nothing about the car Emily dented in the driveway or the utilities she forgot to pay. "Family is family," she said. "Emily needs time." When I visited, my old bedroom had changed. Mom turned it into a sewing room fabric stacked on the bedpins, stuck in every cushion. "Oh, you still wanted to sleep here?" she asked. "I can clear some space on the floor. I stayed in a motel that night, just said I had a lot of work calls. What I didn't say last year, I paid for a chunk of the lake house roof. I sent money without being asked, a quiet gift. Not once did Mom mention it. But when Emily bought patio lights with Joanne's card, she got a thank you dinner. I've learned something about invisibility. It's not just being left out of the photo. Sometimes it's standing in the frame smiling and watching someone else's name appear on the caption. And slowly, even your reflection starts to blur. It started with an email rejection. A small New England journal I'd pitched a story to, a piece about daughters who disappear in plain sight, wrote back to say they'd already received an almost identical submission. Same premise, same phrasing, even the same title. I asked for clarification. They sent a copy. The name on the byline, M. Jordan. I stared at it for a long time. Emily never wrote. Not seriously. She journaled about breakups and grocery lists. She once called semicolons fancy commas. But there it was in print, my voice wearing her name. A week later, I lost a spot at a writing retreat. A friend from college had invited me months ago. Suddenly she backed out, said the retreat had a reputation to protect, wouldn't say more. It didn't make sense. I'd never missed a deadline, never turned in sloppy work. But something had shifted, quiet, subtle. That same week, I saw Emily tagged in a post from that friend. A wine night, smiles, candles, #new connections. I asked Mom if she knew anything. She blinked slowly as if I'd asked something strange. Emily's just putting herself out there. You used to be like that, remember? No, I didn't remember. Because I never had that kind of permission. I began to realize how far the echo reached. I found out the family group chat had been renamed. I was no longer in it. When Aunt June asked if I could help proofread her church newsletter, Emily replied instead. Sent in my old template. Even used my intro paragraph. I didn't know whether to be angry or tired. It felt like I'd dropped my keys somewhere in a house that used to be mine, and now every room was locked from the inside. The worst part wasn't that Emily was taking my words. It was how easily the people around her believed they'd been hers all along. It was late spring when I drove up to Maine to the cottage where Grandma Lois used to live. She passed 5 years ago, but the house had stayed in the family mostly empty now, a place we were keeping for summer, though no one really came. I needed air. Somewhere that didn't smell like old wine in comparison. The cottage was as I remembered, low ceilings, pale curtains, a screen door that never quite latched. I cleaned out the pantry-swept dust from the floorboards and found myself in the attic by accident chasing a draft that turned out to be a loose window latch. That's where I found the box. It was tucked behind a stack of winter quilts. Nothing special on the outside, just a banker's box with yellowed tape. Inside were letters, photos, brittle receipts. I wouldn't have looked twice if I hadn't seen my mother's name in Grandma's handwriting. Joanne June, 1979. I sat down on the attic floor and read, slowly, carefully. Each letter was to Grandma Lois's sister, my great-aunt Frances. They weren't dramatic, not even angry, but they were honest in a way I'd never heard from anyone in my family. Joanne's trying with Claire, but I can see her drifting. One letter said, she wants to connect, but it's easier with Emily. Emily mirrors her. Claire makes her confront things she's never faced in herself. Another one dated 2 years later. Claire is quiet, yes, but she notices everything. I think that unnerves Joanne. She doesn't like being watched unless she's ready to perform. I read those lines 5 times. 6. I didn't cry. It wasn't that kind of moment, but something heavy inside me clicked loose. At the bottom of the box were old photos. One from my 5th birthday, Emily at the front with cake on her chin, me half shadowed in the back. Then the original version, the same photo uncropped. I stared at myself in that corner, slightly blurry, but still there. It wasn't just Emily who had rewritten things. It started much earlier than I'd thought. The invitation came by email, one of those group messages sent to too many people with too few details. Subject: Jordan Family Reunion, Summer at the Lake. It was signed Love Joanne and Emily, as if that was a natural pairing, as if those 2 names had always hosted this family. I hadn't been invited in years, not formally. I'd shown up once unannounced, only to find the schedule had changed. Different weekend, different guest list. No one had told me. But this time, I was included. Almost like they'd forgotten to leave me out. Emily was organizing the slideshow. She called it Family Through the Years. I emailed her to ask if she wanted some photos, childhood birthdays, camping trips with Dad, old snapshots of Grandma Lois at the beach. She replied 4 days later, I think we're good, just trying to keep it current. You know how people hate long slideshows. I didn't answer. I scanned through the photos on my own, wondering when my face had started looking like someone else's memory. Mom called 2 weeks before the reunion. Said she was so glad I could come this year. Emily's really been doing so much for this family, she said. She's stepped up in ways I never imagined. I bit my lip and said nothing. I wondered what stepping up meant. Using my words, wearing my voice, being seen. I almost didn't go. But something in me, maybe that old part that used to win spelling bees and stay late to clean up the classroom, wanted to show up, to look them all in the eye and know at least once I hadn't disappeared by choice. I brought my own slideshow, not dramatic, just a file on a flash drive quietly slipped into the presentation queue. I didn't know if I'd use it. I only knew I had to be ready. When I arrived that afternoon, the lake shimmered just like always. The porch was full of folding chairs. The grill was already lit. My mother hugged me like we hadn't skipped anything. But in her eyes, there was a flicker something rehearsed. I caught them by the garage, Emily and Uncle Dennis. He was holding a beer in one hand and gesturing with the other like he was offering advice she didn't ask for. She smiled, tilted her head, touched his elbow lightly. I didn't hear much, just fragments. Claire's always been delicate about this stuff. She takes things too seriously. You know how she is. That was enough. Uncle Dennis saw me a few minutes later near the cooler. He didn't say hello, just nodded like I was someone he used to work with. The next morning, I woke up to an email. The publisher contact he'd promised to introduce me to, gone. Things fell through, he wrote. Might not be the right fit after all. I didn't reply. Instead, I checked the shared family calendar. There was a note Emily had added weeks earlier. Ask Dennis about Claire's proposal. Not urgent. The lake house had never felt smaller. People brushing past each other in hallways, laughing too loudly, passing me paper plates without making eye contact. I'd brought brownies. No one touched them. Mom floated from guest to guest in her lake earrings glass in hand, smiling like nothing ever needed to be explained. When she passed me, she paused just long enough to say, "You look tired, honey. Are you sleeping enough?" I smiled. Said yes. But what I wanted to ask was this. When did I become a story they told behind closed doors, and how many of those stories started with the words, "You know how Claire is"? Dinner was served on long folding tables dressed with linen runners and mismatched wildflowers. Someone played soft jazz from a speaker near the porch steps. The sun was low, painting everything gold like it wanted us to believe this was a perfect day. Mom stood slowly, her glass lifted just above shoulder height. "I want to take a moment," she said, "to honor someone who's been my rock, my helper, my loyal one." There was a beat of silence before she turned to Emily and smiled. To the only child who stayed loyal. Applause, laughter, the scraping of chairs as people turned to look at her. Emily did her shy smile again, the one she wore like a soft badge. Her shoulders curled inward like she didn't expect it, but of course she did. I didn't move. Aunt June leaned over and asked if I'd take a photo of the table. I nodded, lifted her phone, pressed the button. Then I walked back inside. The air conditioning hummed like a held breath. I opened the laptop near the drink station where the slideshow was queued up and waiting. Emily's version was first edited smooth, full of bright faces and perfect poses. My name appeared once, maybe twice, blurred smiling in the back. I added mine to the queue. Quietly, without erasing hers. 10 minutes later, everyone was called inside for a quick trip down memory lane. They filed in sun-warmed and wine-happy plates, still full. The lights dimmed, the screen flickered. First hers. Photos of birthdays, graduations, beach days. Emily laughing, Emily dancing, Mom hugging her. Dad present but always off to the side. No one seemed to notice what was missing, until the file changed. Black screen, then Claire Jordan, a different story. And beneath it, sometimes what's cropped out matters more than what's left in. I didn't look at them. I didn't need to. I stood at the back of the room and waited. The first slide was familiar because they'd seen it before. My 5th birthday. The version Emily had used showed her in front cake smeared on her chin confetti in her hair. I was barely in the frame. But this time, the full photo appeared, uncropped. I was sitting to the side holding the knife the one who had cut the cake. My name was on the banner, not hers. Slide 2, a letter scanned and faded in Grandma Lois's cursive. Her words filled the screen. Claire sees more than she says. Joanne finds that unsettling, I think. Emily is easier. Silence spread like fog. Then came the audio faint. At first, just voices over the crackle of a porch call. I'd recorded it 3 months ago. Emily's voice talking to Uncle Dennis. Claire still thinks she's the smart one. It's kind of sad, really. She never realized being right isn't the same as being wanted. Gasps 1 or 2, a hand over a mouth. Slide 4, the credit card report. Charges from a boutique in Portland hotel bookings dinners for 2. All under my name. All paid by me. My old joint account left open and forgotten until someone remembered the login. Next, photos of family events, reunions, birthdays, weddings. Each one had been cropped the same way. I had the originals. I showed them all, frame by frame, name by missing name. In the back row, Aunt June dropped her glass. Someone moved to help her. No one said anything, and at the center of the room, Emily sat frozen. Her hands were still her eyes, scanning for a cue, a line, a way out. There wasn't one. The last slide was simple. A picture of me and Dad in the garage holding up a wooden sailboat. We weren't smiling, just focused hands full of sawdust and quiet. And beneath it, some things were never supposed to be erased. I let the room sit with it. I didn't cry. I didn't watch my mother's face. I just stood there letting the silence be mine for once. When the lights came back on, no one clapped. Emily stood slowly. Her mouth opened like she meant to explain something, but the words didn't come. Her hands hovered near her chest, empty. Uncle Dennis looked away. Aunt June whispered something to her husband and left the room. Only Mom remained still, glass in hand, back straight. Her face unreadable in that practiced way I'd seen all my life. She didn't say my name. Didn't ask why I'd done it. She just said, "You didn't have to embarrass her like that. Not me, not us, just her." I looked at her, really looked. The turquoise earrings, the wine glass she never refilled but always held. And for the first time I understood something I hadn't let myself name. She had known, not all of it maybe, but enough. The charges. The job, leads that slipped away. The way I disappeared from photos like I'd been too hard to place. It hadn't been about loyalty. Not really. It had been about comfort. Emily didn't ask questions. I did. And asking questions in our family had always been a kind of betrayal. I didn't do it to embarrass her, I said. I kept my voice even not angry. Just true. I did it because you were never going to stop pretending. Mom didn't respond. She turned her head toward the window where the lake shimmered in the early dusk. Someone cleared their throat. A cousin, then a shuffle of chairs. The spell broke, but the air stayed heavy. I walked outside before dessert. The air was cooler now, and someone had started packing up the folding tables. From the porch, I heard Emily crying. Soft, practiced. I didn't go to her. I got in my car, started the engine, and drove until the lake was just a sound memory. Until even the pine trees felt like they belonged to someone else. 3 days passed before Mom called. I let it go to voicemail, listened to it twice before deleting. "You've made things complicated, Claire. I just wish you'd handled it differently. I thought you were stronger than this." No apology. No, I didn't know. Just a shift of blame so smooth you'd miss it if you weren't paying attention. 2 days later, she sent an email. A single line. "Despite everything, I still love you." Despite. I didn't answer. What could I say that hadn't already been buried beneath years of almosts and not quites? Emily never reached out. Maybe she thought silence was the better look. Maybe she believed she'd still come out clean. Uncle Dennis unfollowed me on everything. Aunt June sent me a message that said simply, "I had no idea. I'm sorry." I didn't know whether to believe her. A week later, a small box arrived on my doorstep. Inside was a photo frame glass, heavy the good kind. No note. Just a picture tucked inside. It was me and Dad again in the garage. The same one from the end of the slideshow. But this time, someone had cleaned up the image, cropped it tight. Just our hands on the wood sawdust in the air. No faces, no noise, just work. Quiet, steady. I don't know who sent it. Maybe it was Mom, maybe someone else. But it sits on my shelf now. Not because I need proof, because I need the reminder. There was a time when I was seen, not explained, not rewritten, just seen. And maybe that's all I ever wanted. The reunion photo went up 2 weeks later. Someone tagged me, probably by mistake. I wasn't in it. There was an empty chair where I had been sitting. Emily had moved into frame. Mom had her hand on her shoulder. Everyone looked full-flushed like they'd eaten well. I didn't save the picture. I didn't need the reminder. That Sunday, I made peach cobbler from scratch. My kitchen smelled like cinnamon and something close to forgiveness. I watched the syrup bubble at the edges and didn't think about who else would taste it. I ate it warm by myself from a chipped plate I'd had since college. No candles, no toast, just me. There are things I'll never get back. Rooms I'll never be invited into again. Stories already rewritten too many times to pull apart. But there's something freeing in knowing I'm no longer required to stay silent just to keep the peace. I don't know what my mother tells people now. Maybe that I was dramatic, sensitive, too smart for my own good. Maybe that I disappeared. But I didn't disappear. I just stopped standing in rooms that pretended I wasn't there. I left before dessert. I didn't say goodbye. They'll remember that part.